Welcome to this edition of Capital Update. I'm your host, Matt Swenson. This is State Representative Kim Norton. Welcome, Kim.
Hello, good to see you again.
Good to see you too, Representative. It's good to have you folks tune in Rochester to hear what's happening here at the state capitol and to hear what Representative Norton is doing on your behalf. And you folks are very much focused on balancing this budget this session, looking at a $994 million state budget deficit, but a third of that has already been resolved by the legislature and Governor Pawlenty.
It has. We've passed a third of the budget cuts. We have some jobs bills off. We've fixed GAMC, so we've done a lot of work very early this session, which was good news. We have work ahead of us. We still have to make some cuts and bring out a budget for the Health and Human Services area and also K-12.
And I think it's important just to highlight what was in that first budget bill. We were looking at $312 million in targeted budget cuts to 10 specific areas. And that is, like you said, 1/3 of the budget solution. It
was. There were cuts in areas of agriculture and environment and energy, government operations, higher education, which was a very difficult budget for me. I did vote for the bill initially off the House floor and was disturbed with the cuts we had to make, but pleased that we were able to come to, the committee was able to come to the floor with something we could live with. And unfortunately in conference committee, some of those provisions that were very important to me, and particularly for my community with the Genomics Partnership, and also for students. The work-study programs were cut, and some grant money was cut for students, and so ultimately I didn't support the bill, but it did have enough votes to pass. So I'm hopeful that as time moves ahead, we'll be able to still concentrate on that higher education bill and see if we can't fix some of the issues that are left in that bill, because the state's covering less and less higher education as a percent of its budget, which means, of course, that our students and our families carry the brunt of that.
Absolutely, and I think it's important for folks back home to understand real clearly why this is happening to the state budget. We looked at a $6.4 billion deficit last year, $1 billion this year. Down the road, we're looking at another $6 billion deficit. Why is this happening, and what can we really do about it?
Well, and it is part of what's happening across the entire country. It's due to the federal economy and actually also worldwide. The economies in many countries are devastated right now, and we are coming back. We were told that the economy would turn around this year. We are seeing that, but it's turning around very slowly, and so we're having to be patient. And because revenues are down, because tax receipts are down in the state, it means we have to curb what we spend. So that's what we've been busy doing, trying to find the best way to reform government, to make cuts as needed in order to have a balanced state budget.
And from what I understand, the lagging impact of this recession will have an impact on next year's budget as well, and that's because a lot of the economic problems we're seeing right now will show up on tax receipts next year in Minnesota.
A year from now, that's true. And frankly, the executive branch and the legislature has not come to agreement on how to handle the structural deficits we have in our state. We've tended to, over the past many years now, handle the problem for this year, and we forget to look down the road 5 to 10 years and look at it structurally. So that is going to happen. I'm committed to next year really digging in and seeing if we can't fix the structural problems with our funding.
And speaking of this year's problems, we're still looking at 2/3 of the budget that needs to be resolved at this point. You've held Health and Human Services and Education off right now because we are waiting for $408 million coming in from the federal government that will make our budget picture clearer here in Minnesota.
Yes, certainly. Some of it is recovery dollars that the federal government is sending in. Some of it is part of the healthcare reform that we might be able to capitalize on, and we just don't know right now. So the Health and Human Service budget is being worked on. I would say the skeleton is in place. It's how can we flesh it out a little bit, and so that'll come out in the next week, and I think it'll be very devastating. It's been a very difficult bill to deal with. No one wants the disabled, our seniors, folks in poverty to be hurt any further in a time of economic, downturn, and that's what's going to happen. There will be cuts to all those programs, but hopefully our cuts will be less devastating than perhaps the ones recommended by the governor's budget.
And I know as a parent and former school board member, you share the priority with the governor and legislators on both sides of the aisle to protect our classrooms from any cuts this session.
Yes, part of what's made Minnesota the great state it is because we've always had a strong K-12 system and higher education system as well. And so we will hold that off. I'm not anticipating cuts to that system. There will be no new money, which of course for the local districts does mean they will have to continue to trim their own personal budgets, but we will not cut the per pupil funding that the school districts get. So that is some good news, though it still isn't going to be easy for the local districts, and I know that, and I know, it's very difficult for them at this time, and I sympathize, having served in that role before.
Well, with a month left of session, I know you have a lot of work left to do here at the Capitol. Thank you for coming into the studio, Representative, and thank you for tuning in Rochester. We'll see you next time.